started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome. Good morning to the first session here in the Gap Space. I shall now bring Justin Milano to you to kick things off.
All right. Thank you, Rosalind. I'm excited to be here with all you guys. How's that sound there? Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah? Is it too loud? No, it's good? All right. So this is fun. I'm going to be able to go side to side here to really capture the whole audience. All right, so my name is Justin Milano, and I'm a co-founder and executive coach here at Good Culture. So I've been an entrepreneur for the past 13 years. I come from Silicon Valley, and I've also been an executive coach for the past 7 years. So I've had the privilege of working with lots of founders all around the world. We currently train founders in the United States, Latin America, here in Southeast Asia. And so been learning a lot about this thing called entrepreneurship. And I just want to offer that if you think you're in here to learn about fundraising or your product and things like that, you're in the wrong room. We're going to be talking about what it actually means to be an entrepreneur. Right, the mindsets, the psychology that's required to be an entrepreneur that can grow and expand and scale something of tremendous value in the world. Okay, so this is a deeper topic. I'm going to bring you guys to a level where we're going to explore some kind of shadow parts of ourselves, but then we're going to bring it up and make it really light at the end. And my hope is that you guys will be that much more prepared to be the rock star entrepreneurs that you are. And so my first question is, how many of you are actively building a company right now? You could just raise your hand. Okay, and I know there's a lot of interns in the room too, so people that are excited about being entrepreneurs, is that correct? People who are planning on building an entrepreneurial company but aren't doing so yet? Anybody? Yeah? Okay. So my goal here is not to scare you away from being an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur is an absolutely beautiful thing. It's one of the best things you can possibly choose to do. However, the way we've been doing it in our world has been creating a lot of suffering. So let's go through this. If you haven't caught this article, it's called The Psychological Price of Entrepreneurship. All right, so this is, Inc. magazine, it's one of the top entrepreneurial publications in the world, and this is one of the most read articles in the history of the magazine. It won awards. All right, it's been shared 123,000 times. Okay, so what the article talked about, the subhead says a lot. It says, no one said building a company was easy, but it's time to be honest about how brutal it really is and the price that so many founders secretly pay. So in the article, there was a venture capitalist named Brad Feld. He's a really great investor. He's also been an entrepreneur. And he came out in the article and he talked about his own battles with depression and anxiety and overwhelm in being an entrepreneur and being a venture capitalist. When the article was released, thousands of entrepreneurs from around the world reached out to him, thanking him for sharing his experience. And they mentioned that they were going through similar things behind the scenes. And as he shared later, many of these founders are some of the top founders of our time. Okay, so in entrepreneurship, this is something that not a lot of us like to talk about, but the fear, the stress, the burnout, the depression, the overwhelm, the co-founder conflict, all of these things are so common, but no one wants to talk about it. Okay, it makes sense. You're out there as an entrepreneur, you want to raise money, you want to recruit team members, you got to act like it's all good. You put a mask on, like everything's great, my company's doing great, I'm killing it, I'm crushing it, right? But behind the scenes, it can oftentimes be quite a lonely place, right? So it's important to be aware of this. Now, most people say, well, those must be the founders that are struggling, right? So here's arguably the top founder of our time, Elon Musk, right? He is the most well-respected and revered founder in the world today. 60% of founders look up to him as their idol. He comes out recently, about a month ago, and he puts out a tweet talking about entrepreneurship, and he says, the reality is great highs, terrible lows, and unrelenting stress. Don't think people want to talk about the last two, right? So people actually asked him, like, hey, are you bipolar, right? And he's like, no, not medically, right? And like I said, there are, I don't want to diminish the importance. Bipolar is such a powerful mental condition, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs that do experience this. But one of the things that he was alluding to was that just being an entrepreneur the way we build companies, the way we're doing things, the challenges we have to navigate every day, it creates this up and down roller coaster ride, right? We're all familiar with this. So one day everything's great and wonderful and amazing, and then all of a sudden next day things are really challenging and you're down low, and you go back up, and you keep riding this roller coaster, and it really exhausts you on a mental and psychological level, right? So here's again, one of the greatest founders of our time, changing our world in profound ways, coming out and talking about this to be able to bring light to the issue, which you really appreciate. So what's happened is that venture capital funds like 500 Startups, the Global Accelerator Network, all these partners we work with, they've been asking us at Good Culture, what's causing this suffering in entrepreneurship, right? Because my co-founder is a top emotion psychologist. His name's Daniel Cordaro. So he studied human emotion and human mind for the last 10 plus years. So a lot of what we do is we take psychology and mindset development, we combine that with the world of entrepreneurship to help you be the best possible leader you can, and also to make sure that you can navigate the roller coaster successfully. So people asking us this question, they're bringing us into these major calls and saying, what's causing this suffering? So what we've done is we've actually had research now on over 1,000 entrepreneurial companies just in the last few months. We've studied founders that are in, again, the US, Latin America, here in Southeast Asia, the United States, and so forth. We've got research on over 1,000 entrepreneurial companies. And when we look through the research, we found a few key patterns that are at the root of this kind of challenge and suffering that a lot of us experience. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go into those challenges, and then by the end of this presentation, we're also going to talk about the antidotes. We're going to talk about the mindsets that we can deploy to be able to overcome those challenges. So you got to bear with me here, because we're going to go kind of down the roller coaster a little bit into places that we don't want to look and explore, and then we're going to come right back up again, okay? So here it is. We call this the triangle of leadership or entrepreneurial suffering. Okay, so the first thing that we've noticed in our research, this was based on our scientific results and also just working with entrepreneurs, is there's this tendency to identify with our company. Okay, so I am Justin Milano, I am Good Culture, right? I am, Elon Musk, I am Tesla. I am Steve Jobs, I'm Apple. I'm Jeff Bezos, I'm Amazon, okay? Every one of you that's building a company right now, I imagine in some ways you feel like you are your company. It came through you, you've birthed it, you spend every waking moment of your life working on it, so therefore you identify with it. Okay, so that seems great, like, oh, it's my baby, right? It's my baby, I wanna, take care of it. Now there is a problem though there, which is when you identify with your company, what happens when your company goes through those major down curves, right? That becomes a reflection of you. You see what I'm saying? So the company is naturally going to go through ups and downs because that's what entrepreneurship's all about. You're learning, you're growing, and developing. So if you go through the down curve, then all of a sudden you think that's all about you, that's going to cause some unconscious suffering below the surface. Okay, so that's number one. We'll go a little bit deeper into that. Number two is an unhealthy relationship with anxiety. Okay, so entrepreneurship is one of the riskiest and most volatile professions you could possibly choose. Every day is the complete unknown, right? So every Sunday you're sitting up and you're going, am I going to have enough money? Okay, will I lose this team member? Will my co-founder quit? What happens if no investors come and back me, right? We're constantly facing all these uncertainties, and when things are uncertain and unknown, it's natural to feel afraid. We don't like to talk about it, but let's be real about it. We all experience these fears behind the scenes. So if we have an unhealthy relationship with our anxiety, if we look at it like it's this terrible thing that we need to get rid of that shouldn't be there, right? If we look at our anxiety, so what's at the root of our anxiety, at the very base root of it, is you're trying to control uncontrollable outcomes. We all have desires for the way we want the world to be. Right? We want things to show up in an exact way. We want these customers, we want all of these people to follow our script, we want our team members to act this way. We're trying to control uncontrollable stuff. So what happens is that every day, there's 7 billion people on the planet. There's trillions of different interactions going on that make up this thing that we call life, right? And the reality is it doesn't always work out exactly the way we want it to, does it? Right? That's kind of a futile task to be able to think that you can control the way the world's showing up each day. So it creates lots of anxiety. An unhealthy relationship with anxiety, it leads to burnout. We'll show you this in a little bit. So you've got this, I am my company. You've got this unhealthy relationship with anxiety and this huge amounts of stress. And then this is the #1 blind spot in our research. Across 1,000 entrepreneurial companies, okay, the #1 blind spot that shows up is around self-compassion. Beating ourselves up for our mistakes and our failures. Okay, does anyone got one of those little gremlins, one of those little voices in your head that's constantly telling you that you're worthless and terrible and oh my God, how did you make that mistake? And right, we've all got that little guy that's talking to us, right? So we go through entrepreneurship, we go through perceived failures, we make mistakes, and we act like it's all good, but underneath the surface, again, oftentimes we're going, man, we're beating the crap out of ourselves. So when we're beating the crap out of ourselves, combine that with, so I am my company, the company goes on a downturn, that's a reflection of me. Then as a reflection of me, I'm starting to beat the crap out of myself, and then I'm trying to control the world to kind of change my circumstances. What's going to happen? It creates a lot of suffering, right? This is the kind of the mental feelings that we don't really want to talk about. It's really challenging. Okay, so this is the triangle. So let's go into each one just a little bit more here, just so we can understand them at a little bit more texture. When we identify with our company, okay, when we're talking about identification, we're talking about I am blank, right? So as soon as you say I am my company, I am good culture, or if you're Elon Musk, I am Tesla, as soon as you say I'm a game-changing leader, you create this identity with your investors and your team members, like I'm the next big thing. That comes with hidden expectations. You have to make certain decisions. You have to show up certain ways, right? So as soon as I say to you guys, I'm an executive coach, you guys automatically have some type of opinion about who I am and how I should be showing up, right? So it's okay to identify. It's just important to understand that when we do identify, it creates all sorts of conditions. So we get attached to things being a certain way. When we're attached to things being a certain way, that creates fear, it creates anxiety, and it affects our decision making. Right? So if you're the next big game-changing entrepreneur, you might be trying to drive your company to be bigger and get to those big venture capital funds like Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia when it's not even ready because you're trying to uphold an image that I'm the next game-changing entrepreneur. You see what I'm saying? Okay? So this is identification with the company. Now what's fueling this identification, here's the emotion that is fueling this. Okay, this is some of the emotional intelligence stuff. And again, these are our shadow parts. We don't want to necessarily acknowledge that we have these, but we all do. So think about this in the world, right? So the movie Star Wars, it was all about the light and the dark, right? So Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. If you go to places like Bali, where I live now, right, they celebrate the light and the dark. You'll see statues of, different deities like Ganesh and Shiva and so forth, but you'll also see statues of different like Oga creatures. So they kind of celebrate both the light and the dark. So as human beings, we both have our very bright sides, the ones that we like to show each other. So when we're going out here and we're networking and we're having drinks, we show our bright side, right? But we also have these kind of shadow parts that we often like to tuck away and say, that's not me. But when you're identifying with anything, what you're talking about is it's actually being fueled by arrogance. It's the belief system that this is all about me. So to think that your company is all about you is actually a form of arrogance. Right? Your company is way bigger than you. What's really true is that you've been chosen. You have these particular skill sets, these unique skills, and you're being asked to be able to use those skills to be of service to something greater than you, to be able to offer something to the world that makes people's lives better. When you start to look at it from that perspective, where it's not all about me, it's about how can I serve, that starts to change the narrative a little bit, right? So when you're operating from this place of arrogance, you're typically wanting to compare yourself to others, and you need to be the best. How many leaders do you see out there in the world that are just insanely committed to being the best? It comes from their own self-importance. Okay, we want to move beyond that. Okay, now let's talk about the unhealthy relationship with anxiety. This is what they call in psychology the chronic threat cycle. Okay, so what happens is that as every Sunday night, we're sitting up, we're facing all the unknowns each week. Will I have enough money? Will this product work? Will my team stay in order? Right? We have all these anxieties each and every week. If we don't deal with those anxieties in a healthy way, it starts to burn us out. And once we start to get burned out, then we start to feel depressed. And then once we feel depressed, we start to feel overwhelming because the world looks very overwhelming. Okay, and then round and round we go. This is the cycle that goes on. And a lot of people can handle it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, but when it comes to building a company over 5, 10, 15 years, this is why burnout's one of the top reasons for entrepreneurial failure. So remember that article, The Psychological Price of Entrepreneurship? What did it talk about? The fear, the anxiety, the burnout, the depression. This is what entrepreneurs are experiencing in mass scale behind the scenes, and no one's talking about it. Okay, it's unfortunate, but it's important to be aware of it, because once you're aware of it and you start to do the work on yourself to be able to navigate these things in a more healthy ways, you don't have to experience this reality. Okay, this is what we're here to do, is to support you guys with that. Okay? What's fueling our anxiety? It's the emotion greed, right? There's never enough. I must always have more, right? This is unfortunate, but so in the human mind, this is a really fascinating thing, okay? Fear and desire are perfect mirrors of one another. The stronger your desires, the stronger your fears, right? So the second that you say, I want to succeed at something, you have an equal condition for, I don't want to fail. Do you see how they can't exist without each other? The stronger you want to succeed, the more afraid you are you're going to fail. The second that you send out an email to an investor looking to raise money, to get that vital money that you need to be able to grow your company and get it to the next level and really realize your dreams, the second that you send out that email, you have an equal fear of, oh no, what happens if I don't get the money? What happens if my company fails and falls flat in the face and my dreams don't come through? It's hardwired that way in our brains. So the stronger that our desires are, the more anxieties we're going to feel. Okay, so just really important to be aware of that. And so this is what's happening throughout our world. We're living in a world where everybody's so, fueled by their desires in such incredible ways. I want more, I want bigger houses, I want bigger cars, I want all this stuff, right? And so what happens? We live in a society that's full of fear right now. You can feel it everywhere. You can see it happening all over the world. So in entrepreneurship, unfortunately, a lot of us experience this when there's not enough time, when there's not enough money, when there's not enough bandwidth, when there's not enough support. This leads to anxious and fear-based behaviors, right? And then we start to get kind of greedy. We start to hoard things. We get very self-centered. We're focused more on ourselves than others. Again, these aren't, the most enlightening human qualities, but it's important to be aware of how this is playing out. So if you're in a lot of anxiety, oftentimes you're not seeing the bigger picture. Okay, and here again is the research from our thing on self-compassion. So you can see here that the number one blind spot at 39% was self-compassion. So people beating themselves up, negative self-talk, believing others' stories about themselves, right? So when you're talking about self-beat-up, the emotion that's fueling that is pride. Okay, so this comes from being really hard on ourselves, a sense of low self-confidence, right? And then when we have this kind of low self-confidence, it creates a feeling of loneliness and mental suffering behind the scenes that no one really wants to talk about. And this subconscious unworthiness, it leads to prideful behaviors. And we start to kind of step on others. We're more of a tyrant. We need to feel powerful. So if you look at the United States and Donald Trump, he's a good example of somebody that likes to step on others and blah, blah. So he acts like he's almighty and powerful. Deep down, he's actually quite afraid. Okay, that's really what's going on. And we can see this around the world, right? I get a lot of chuckles, right? So I don't like to bring politics too much, but he's a great example of a guy that has some kind of deeper down wounds. So anyway, so important to understand all this. I just wanted to, again, I know that's really heavy, so let's just take a moment just to kind of shake off everything I just said. I know it's like, oh man, Justin, I came to your talk. I thought it was going to be about how I could grow and make my business huge, and it is about that. But in order to get there, we had to go through these kind of unconscious parts of ourselves to be able to understand them and make friends with them. So now let's talk about, why am I going back? Oh, yeah, that's where we go. It's the button. Got it. Okay, so here we go. Now let's talk about the triangle of entrepreneurial expansion. Okay, so we're going to flip the script now and look at the other side of the equation. and the ways and the mindsets that we can operate that are really the antidotes to this traditional way that most entrepreneurs are operating. Okay, so number one is your company is far bigger than you. Okay, when you realize that you are simply just a vessel to be of service to the world, that creates a feeling of humility. Right, this is really important. So your company, whatever you're building and so forth, it is so far bigger than you. You've got team members that are around you that are dedicating their lives to this mission. The products and services that you're creating are going to have ripple effects on society for decades, for hundreds of years. It's massive, right? It's going to outlive your lifetime. So it's really important to remember this is not all about you. It's about being of service to the world. And that leads us to our second one. Selfless service is the great antidote to anxiety. Okay, selfless service is you basically wake up every day and you ask the question, how can I be of greatest service today? Right, and be surprised by that, right? So instead of us trying to control our reality and say this thing should be this way, this should be happening today, that should be happening today, it's okay to have goals and all that kind of stuff. But it's really important to ask yourself that question when you wake up, how is the universe asking me to serve today? And for me, it's oftentimes amazing. Like, today, for instance, I'm here meeting with all of you guys, and I'm giving my all in bringing this information, this wisdom that we've developed to you guys to be able to hopefully propel you into a much friendlier experience of being entrepreneurs. On other days, everything can be going quite wrong for me. None of the things that I want to happen are happening. But I'll walk down to a restaurant and there'll be somebody there who ends up connecting with me and they've got something major that just happened and I just happen to be a coach. And so all of a sudden I support them through that and before you know it, they're in tears and a big breakthrough happened. I didn't get paid at all for it, right? But I'm like, wow, that's how I'm being asked to serve today. So this comes from a place of really trusting the flow of our universe and knowing that whatever is showing up is perfect, that there's some kind of bigger scheme, bigger plan in place here, and how can I align with that and show up and be the most powerful version of myself? When you start to do that, you're no longer afraid by all the uncertainty. You're actually more in awe about like, oh wow, look at this is showing up. This is actually the way my company wants to go. This is the place I can be of greatest service. So there's a psychological adaptability there, right? And that's one of the greatest skill sets that investors look for in entrepreneurs nowadays. Then the final one, growth mindset. This is based on the research of Carol Dweck. She's a Stanford psychologist. This is the number one skill set that Google teaches all of its high performers that are making the leap to being managers and leaders in the organization. The growth mindset. You know what the number two one is? Emotional intelligence. You wouldn't know that, but that's what Google teaches all their top performers. So with a growth mindset, you're kind to yourself through your mistakes and failures. You realize that it's all about learning and growing and evolving and embracing challenges, right? So when challenges come up, you don't see them as these major threats. You see them as opportunities to learn and grow and do something even better based on the information that's being provided to you, and you're not beating the crap out of yourself in the process. We'll go through the importance of that in a second. So again, let's talk about this identity thing. So your company's bigger than you. You are not your company. This is also really important to remember. If your company does indeed fail and stop operating, your company may fail, but you will never be a failure. It's really too important to separate those two. Okay, just want to land that one. So it's okay to identify, but just know that those identifications, they come with hidden expectations. And when we become aware of those expectations, we can cut off the anxiety at its source. So with bigger than me, the emotion that's fueling this is humility. It's freedom from our own self-importance. Okay, this doesn't mean that you're not special and amazing. You guys are all special and amazing. You're in all your own amazing ways. But freedom from your own self-importance, when you operate with this subconscious humility, it leads to seeing more possibilities, more creativity, more innovation, the emotion awe, really recognizing that there's something far bigger than you that's taking place in front of your eyes each day, right? And of course, service. So we want you to operate with a sense of humility. Now, as far as selfless service, number two here, this is some neuroscience. It's really important to recognize, okay? So as human beings, when we walk through the world, we take in all of this sensory data all around us, right? And all of this sensory data goes to a place in our brain called the thalamus, which is the switchboard for our brain. And when the information goes to the thalamus, we have this part of our brain called the amygdala, which many of you may have heard of, that does a threat assessment. And if a threat is present, whether it's real, like happening right now, like a volcano erupting, or whether it's imagined, you're worried about something happening in the future that may or may not happen. Okay, the job of the amygdala is to shut down the conscious thinking part of our brain and to initiate a fast unconscious response. Right, so think about it, a car is coming at you at lightning speed, you want to get out of the way. Right, that's what your fear is there to tell you to do. So this part of our brain that's responsible for that is called the limbic part of our brain. The limbic part of our brain is responsible for food, okay, fornication, fight or flight. So food, sex, and fear. The basic components of being a human being and ensuring our survival. We need to procreate, we need to eat, okay, and we need to be able to get away from predators. That's what that part of our brain is, okay? So when we're operating from a place of anxiety on a day-by-day basis, okay, we're not accessing the full part of our brain, which is the cortex and the prefrontal cortex. These are the parts of our brains that are responsible for creativity, innovation, new possibilities, fresh new decisions, right? So if we're operating in a place of anxiety throughout the day, we're losing access to our most powerful self. So when we operate from a place of selfless service, seeing that you're simply a vessel here to serve and you're not so afraid by the day-to-day challenges that are coming up, you see them as perfect, you're operating from a part of yourself that's far more powerful and far more expansive. So that's the neuroscience behind it. If you get out of your ego and get more into the expansiveness of let me be of service to the world, you are far more powerful. So what's the emotion that's fueling selfless service? Generosity. This comes from a feeling of abundance and knowing that you have enough and knowing that there's enough for everybody. You feel connected to all living beings in our planet. You see the universe as a friendly place when you're operating from this place. And when you're operating from a place of generosity, it leads you to philanthropy, love, impact, community, greater leadership resilience, right? You have more time, right? So when we're coming from that place of generosity, it's truly empowering. Okay, so now growth mindset. Okay, so with a growth mindset, you are eliminating half of your problems, right? So with every single problem that you face, with every challenge that comes up in your entrepreneurial company, you have to deal with your relationship to the problem and the actual problem. Okay, so if a challenge comes up and you start saying, man, I'm so stupid, blah, blah, I can't believe I made that mistake, this is terrible, my God, my life's gonna fall apart, right? All those kind of things, and all of a sudden, what do? You go off and you watch Netflix, you lose yourself in your favorite television shows, you go into Facebook and you lose yourself for hours. You're wasting all of that time and bandwidth trying to avoid these feelings of self-beat up. So you have to deal with all that. Then you have to go back and actually tackle the problem. See what I'm saying? So you're going to save yourself a lot of time if you can just practice some self-compassion. Like, hey, I'm awesome. I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. This challenge is occurring right now. It didn't work out the way we wanted it to. And what can we learn from this? How can we grow from this? So with a fixed mindset, you waste time, energy, and cognitive bandwidth on managing your relationship to failure. And with a growth mindset, you save massive time and mental resources through self-compassion. Right? You realize that, even if your company fully fails, like I said, failure really doesn't exist. All that learning that you generated from your failed company is going to help you come back and do the next one that much better. Right? So self-compassion is a key ingredient to a lot of the best leaders. Go easy on yourself, focus on fixing the challenges. So growth mindset, the emotion fueling it, self-compassion. It's a sense of unconditional self-love. When you feel whole and complete and perfect, regardless of your perceived successes and failures, that leads to empathy, rapid problem solving, increased mental capacity, and so forth. The science actually shows by Carol Dweck that when you operate with a growth mindset, your brain lights up a different color. You're able to solve problems that much more quicker and save lots of time. Okay, so one of the things I want, this is a little fuzzy, but I want you guys to get to work on loving yourself just the way you are right now. Okay, you can always grow, you can always learn, you can always get better at what you're doing, but ask yourself the question, do I really just fully 100% love myself through and through right now? And a great question to ask is, if your company failed, if you fell flat on your face, if everything didn't work out, would you still love yourself unconditionally? Most people kind of hesitate when I ask that question, right? It's really hard. That's a lifelong journey. So the more that you can get to the point where you just know yourself as whole and perfect and complete, regardless of whatever's showing up in your world, the more available you are to be able to meet the world and show up as your most creative and innovative self. Okay? All right, so one of my favorite movies is The Matrix, Morpheus here. So at the end of the movie, Morpheus says something really important to Neo. And he says, hey, Neo, at some point, you'll come to understand that there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Right? So all the things that we've just went through, you might have read them in a book. You might see them in articles, right? So organizations like Techstars, one of their mantras is, hey, give first. So that's kind of another way of saying like this selfless service, like focus on the value that you can give first. Let that be your driving force that'll help you create and innovate, right? So we see these things all around the world. These opportunities, these messages, they come to us in ancient philosophical texts, right? We practice these things regularly. However, knowing them, reading it in a book, right? Reading an article about it, doesn't mean that you're fully embodying this and walking this path each and every day. So I want each of us to make that commitment that every single day we're going to practice these skills in a much deeper way. That we're going to show up from a place of humility, from a place of selfless service, knowing that we're simply here to be of service to something far greater than us, that we're going to be kind to ourselves with our mistakes and failures. Right? When you start to show up each day and be the embodiment of that, when you start to show a new narrative of how to be a human being, you're inspiring your team members, you're inspiring everybody that you come in contact with. So this is really important work. So what I want for you guys over the course of your life is to really walk this path and become that vision, become that thing that all of us would love to be. It's totally possible, but it takes a lot of work on yourself, a lot of self-inquiry, right? And personal growth work. So when you no longer identify with your company, you are kinder to yourself during the normal setbacks and perceived failures. Okay, the big power play here is to shift into a selfless service mindset. Okay, this is a great little quote. I am here to be of service to humanity, and am open to receive whatever it is that I'm meant to accomplish in this short life. Okay, our life is really short. In the grand scheme of things, this Earth's been around for billions of years. We are just a blip on the radar. We've got a very short time to be here. You've got incredible skills. You've got incredible ingenuity and creativity. How can you offer that in greatest service to our humanity and to our entire world? That's the big question, right? You know, most of what people are building in entrepreneurship, unfortunately, is a complete waste of time. Right now in our world, we have so many things that are pressing for us as a species. And, you know, building apps to compare your clothes with your friends, like that's cool, right? But it's not really going to solve some of the big things we got going on. So do you want to use your creative energy towards something far bigger than you? Do you want to use your creative energy from a place of love and service to other human beings and to our planet? It's a big question to ask yourself, right? So when you operate from this context, this is when you're most powerful. This is when your consciousness expands and you're no longer chained by the suffering of your own mind. Okay, so this is really deep work. And then this is the big payoff. Balanced entrepreneurship. Okay, we talked about the roller coaster in the beginning, right? We're all familiar with the big ups and downs. It's really fun. There's a lot of adrenaline. Woo and woo, you know? It's fun. Don't get me wrong. I got addicted to it. However, this new roller coaster is available to you, but it's not going to be there for you based on what's going on outside of you. If you're waiting for the world to be less chaotic, you're going to be waiting a long time. Okay, this is not about trying to change your external circumstances. Entrepreneurs go, well, you know, once I get to that next round, my anxieties will go away. right? Once I get that customer signed up, my anxieties will go away. We think that there's something outside of ourselves that's going to solve what's going on within. But actually, what I want you guys to do is become psychological judo masters, where basically no matter what's going on outside of you, when you do this kind of work, you can meet it from a place of balance. You can see the greater picture. You can see its perfection, and you can just roll with it. So when the highs happen, you go, hey, good stuff's happening, but I'm not going to get too attached to that because I know that life is going to have something else around the corner for me that's going to be a challenge. And when that challenge hits, I'm not going to go beat myself up and go loathe and get lost in Facebook. I'm going to just learn from that challenge and then bring myself back up again. Right? So you start to kind of experience a little bit of a smoother ride. Which ride is going to be able to achieve its mission over 10, 15, 20 years? Right? I'll take the blue roller coaster there. Right? So really important to understand this, that you do the work on yourself, and from that place, the whole reality around you shifts. Everything looks different once you change yourself. So here's the summary. We want to move from I am my company, experiencing intense amounts of anxiety and beating ourselves up for mistakes and failures, which is rooted in arrogance, greed, and pride. Those are the emotions that are fueling those things. We want to move to my company is far bigger than me, operating from a selfless service mindset with a growth mindset to learn from the mistakes and failures and really be hungry for that opportunity to learn. And all these things are rooted in humility, generosity, and self-compassion. How do you want to be showing up each day? It's a really important question, guys. How do you want to be showing up each day as you're building your company? If you show up in this way, okay, the science shows it, ancient philosophy shows it, you're going to be far more powerful. You're going to have access to so much more creativity, so much more power. You're going to do incredible things for the world that are going to have ripple effects for generations. That's why I call this talk 3 Mindsets for Exponential Growth and Well-Being. Because if you can actually create an entrepreneurial company from a place of balance and well-being, we can actually show other entrepreneurs across the world that that whole suffering thing, the whole fetal position and the anxiety and depression and the burnout and the collapse of your lives and your families and things like that, that stuff's all optional. There's a new way to do entrepreneurship. And the time is now for us all to do it because we need entrepreneurs more than ever to invent new solutions for our world and how we're operating together as a species. Okay, so this is my gift to you guys today. I'll just tell you a little bit about our breakthrough program here. So we've been developing a program over the last couple of years to help really integrate these mindsets at very deep levels, to really do the practice to be able to get to the point where these things become not just something to talk about or something to write about in a book, but again, you practice them at such a level that you end up walking the path. Right, so this is kind of what we're up to as a company here. So we combine scientific measurement. We're now bringing people, we've been doing it online up until this point, but we're actually going to bring it into 3-day in-person trainings now to create community and connection around doing these tools while also providing executive coaching and peer group support. So our breakthrough program combines all of these different things: scientific measurement, in-person retreats, one-on-one coaching, and peer groups to address the things that most of your mentors aren't addressing, right? Most accelerators and so forth, they're not addressing these challenges, right? They're not equipped to address these challenges, but that's what our team is here to do, is to help you get the mindsets for development that are going to make you extremely powerful and feel really great every day. So we just did this with a group of 500 startups founders, Impact Hub founders. We had 3 global cohorts running around the world. It was pretty cool. We focused on 2 interventions, time and stress. And out of the 22 areas that we measured in our scientific results, people improved in 20 out of 22 categories. Okay, that's pretty amazing. So by just focusing on 2 direct interventions, on fear and time, we noticed people improving in psychological adaptability, self-compassion and growth mindset, burnout, and then also, interestingly enough, looking on the business, fundraising confidence, product market fit, customer growth. So what does that show scientifically? It shows that by committing to do the work on yourself, by being the best possible human being you can be, the best leader you can be, and learning these key skills, it translates to your company's success. You make better decisions. You identify the right funders, right? So this is really bold work. I hear most entrepreneurs say, oh, I don't have the time to work on myself. I got to fundraise, a product market fit, get customers, right? Like, it's like, that's it. Like, nothing else in the universe exists. I want to tell you that by carving out a little bit of time to take care of yourself, that's not selfish. That's smart. That's going to help you become the best possible entrepreneurial leader you can be. And again, we're proving this scientifically through all of our work. So that's what I got for you guys today. I'd love to hear some questions from the group, but thank you so much for sitting with us through this, this presentation here. I know it's got a little heavy at first, but we brought it back up there at the end. Really appreciate you guys for being here. Okay, questions? Yes?
You were saying that you are your company.
Here we go.
Hi.
Yep.
You were saying that you being your company is bad. I want to argue that it's actually good.
Yeah.
If you look at the big companies, they became successful because the founders were so attached to them, they were fighting for their life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's great. I'm glad you're bringing this up. So I don't operate in the context of good or bad, right? Like right, wrong, good, bad. You know, it's kind of a limiting context to operate from. So you can be passionately committed to your company, but not be attached to it from a place of ego and my own self-worth, right? So there are people that have, you know, identified as their company, and because their own, you know, ego and because their own self-importance is wrapped up in it, that might give them a fear-based motivation to be able to, you know, sustain and blah, blah, beyond what normal people would. However, as you saw in that neuroscience there, when you're operating from fear-based motivation, you're not as powerful. So here's the thing that's really going to boggle the mind, right? Even people like Steve Jobs and Elon Musk and blah, blah, like there is the potential for human beings to be even more powerful than what we've exhibited so far. But it requires us to get out of our fear-based context and into the service-based context.
Any examples?
Well, most of the people that are actually most powerful in the world, right, don't get all the credit for it. You don't even know they exist. Okay, so this has been talked about in philosophical texts for thousands of years, that you can be so much more powerful when you let go of needing credit for it. It's really, really important. That rattles the whole Silicon Valley mindset.
Any actual examples of this, or is it just like a fairy tale?
Well, here's a perfect example. So the book From Good to Great, okay, by Jim Collins, what he did was he studied the stock market performance for 30 years. And what he found was that the companies that performed the best had CEOs that were very quiet, behind the scenes, less flashy, no one even knew about them, right? Because the flashy CEO that's all caught up in their own self-importance and their ego, they oftentimes make decisions for short-term gain, right? But it's like, if I do this, it'll create a big press headline, everybody get all excited, blah, blah. The best leaders are the ones that go, you know what, that might give us a short-term surge, and it might make our stockholders really happy right now, but what's really best for the long term of this organization? When you make decisions from that place, when you take yourself and your own grandiosity out of the equation, you're that much more powerful. And again, that was all research, that evidence that those companies perform better in the stock market. So that's one example. Other examples would be, you know, great philosophical, spiritual leaders that, again, people never really come in contact with, but their work is rippling throughout the world in amazing ways. So I really appreciate that question. That's like one of my favorite questions I could ever ask.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Okay. Just to summarize my understanding, I mean, true or false? It seems like before you can control your company to whatever height you want to bring it to, you got to be in control of yourself. That's first and foremost. The anxiety takes away the control of yourself. I mean, is that?
Well, I think what you're saying is a really important thing. So if you change yourself, then you can change the world. Right? So it's like the Rumi quote. I love this Rumi quote where he says, you know, yesterday I was clever, so I was trying to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself.
Yes.
Right? So it all starts with the shift within yourself. Once you really master your own mind and you realize how you're operating, your kind of unconscious programming and why you're trying to build this company because you're trying to prove to your father that you are indeed worthy, that you are awesome, right? Then you realize, boy, I'm trying to build this company to impress my father, but I'm actually really good at this. I'd be better off doing that, right? So the more that you understand yourself on a very deep level, the more powerful you are. And then that power starts to emanate out, and you become an inspiration for those that are working with you, and they start going, oh, I can see how he's operating or she's operating, right? And then they start to operate that way, and it ripples out in the world. So this is what happens with great organizations. Now, again, I'm not gonna lie. There are many wacky geniuses who are completely egomaniacs who have created amazing things in the world, and that's all perfect, right? But just because there's a few characters that berate their employees, right, do no work on themselves, they're awful to people, and they've created great things, doesn't mean that all of us should be operating that way, right? So the question is, how do you want to be showing up every day? Do you want to be creating something awesome and be someone that people love and respect, and that you have a sense of community and camaraderie where your people feel good and well every day? Because that's what they're doing at Google. You know, Amazon, they're beating the crap out of their people, and they're very successful, you know, in their products. They're very customer-centric. But at Google and Facebook, their people are really happy and really well, and they're just as awesome. So the choice is, you know, do you want to use that one example of the egomaniac, or do you want to show up and be, I'm as powerful as I can possibly be, and I'm doing it in a way that is 100% in line, in integrity, and I'm congruent. The way that I say I am is the way that I show up and I am each day. That's who I want to be, because I want to look back on my life and say, that's how I was. Yeah. Thank you. Great question. Okay, yes. Well, actually, you were next question over there. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I kind of really, this all resonates with me. I really love the talk.
Great.
And because been there, done that, won the T-shirt. So now I'm like, you know, this is what I need.
You want a T-shirt?
No, in the sense that, you know, been there in the sense.
Okay, I got you.
All those. So my question is, I mean, how much of it is, I mean, your work with entrepreneurs, how much of it is you understanding their particular business, or is it more of just the person and kind of working with them and, you know, the kind of, you know, those growth and, yeah, just could you clarify that a bit?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. I don't see, I mean, when I work with people as clients, I don't see as like, this is you and this is your business. I actually don't even believe in work-life balance. Again, it's kind of like, again, there's this and there's that. What I'm interested in is work-life integration, right? So I see that whatever you're creating is an expression of who you are, what you're up to, and so forth, and the way that you understand yourself. So I see certain people, the more that they generate deeper levels of self-awareness and open up to what really is this whole thing called reality, it starts to change their motivations around what they want to build, right? So when I'm working with people, I'm looking at the whole picture, and I'm actually not too I don't get too caught up on what you're building. I just get really excited about supporting the human being. So I don't care if you fail, if you succeed, all that stuff doesn't really matter to me too much. I just want to make sure that you get aligned fully in who you are and that you are most fulfilled every day. Because I know that once you're most fulfilled, whether it's this company, the next company, and so forth, you're going to create better ripples out in the world. It's going to affect your loved ones, your family, everything. So I look at the whole picture, and I love geeking out on business because I've done 13 years of entrepreneurship. I've raised millions of capital. So I get the whole game. I know how it operates, so I combine the two. Yeah. Yeah, great. Do microphone. Okay, yeah. Yeah.
Hi, my name is William. Thank you very much for the entire session because it exactly hits my pain point. Hence, I giggled right from the start.
Okay.
So I'm actually struggling right now.
Okay.
I have a team of 8 in a startup which I believe will bring that idea. Once it's in the market, it will actually change the life of a lot of people.
Okay.
But I feel very disconnected with my team.
Okay.
The reason is because we were founded, the idea was founded and the team was founded based on the idea alone. So I feel like they are more attached to the idea itself. So when you say that it's more about improving your own self first, then you can actually get better in terms of communicating with other people, and they will look up at you at a different manner. But one thing I realize is that it's also some sort of related of your personal vision and what's your long-term vision in terms of that idea. Like for me myself, I think I kind of am a very not self-centered, but like I'm a very selfless person.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind going through all the struggles and bring that idea ahead. But the thing is about my team is that some of them are actually more focused in terms of, hey, this idea is really cool and I want to do it. But the thing is when it hits down, they'll be like, nah, I'm going to quit. And I spend a lot of time to actually making them connected back again, but I feel disconnected slowly myself, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah. So there's a lot in there. So you're saying that when things aren't going so well, you notice that the team members start to kind of, like it seems like they're really attached to the idea and all that stuff, but if it's not going so well, they start to kind of lose their passion and enthusiasm for the company.
Correct, and it takes longer for me to actually communicate with them to make them understand like, hey, no, this idea is really good, and like it will actually change someone, like think back again, like why are you here in the first place?
Yeah.
And stuff. But the thing is when they hit the reality, they'll be like, hey, no, this is not what I want. Like, I don't care about the customers, I care about the idea. Like the idea is cool.
Yeah.
I don't care whether the customers want it or not, but I'm sure customers want it because I'm also a customer, like that.
So your team members are saying, I like the idea, but I don't care if the customers want it.
I would say
This might be something there to look at.
I would say sort of, like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in my perspective, it's that I would like to take things a little bit slower to actually measure the things to see whether how visible it is. Does it actually provide a value, or is it just us being full of ourselves? Or hey, this idea is cool and stuff like that.
Okay, well here's something that I recommend. Okay, so if you go to goodculture.io/assessment, you can take our assessment for free. Okay, so it's 10, 15 minutes to take the assessment. It's going to illuminate your blind spots and your bright spots. So that research I was referring to, I invite all of you guys to take that assessment. And one thing that's really key, or the reason why I'm bringing this up right now, is with your team, we focus on 3 key areas. We focus on self-awareness, we focus on organizational efficacy, and then we also focus on vision and impact. And so one of the things that's really eye-opening sometimes is in that vision and impact area, that's where you can discover if you or your team members are not really fully aligned with the bigger mission, that they're not feeling fully inspired by this, right? That they're maybe in there for reasons that aren't so aligned. So ideally what you want to do, I'm doing a leadership offsite in Vietnam, with a company that's at Series B level, raised a bunch of money, 11 leaders, 45 team members coming together, and even them with as much product market fit and where they're going, they're constantly revisiting leadership vision and alignment. So that's just part of the job, is getting people realigned with what you're doing, the vision and the why behind it. That is the role of the leader. But if you discover in those assessments, and also you discover just through your experience with the team members, that they're really not fully in, that's going to create a jangle. It's going to really affect your growth. You really want to create a team around you of people that are bought in, because, again, this thing's not going to stop all the external circumstances. You need people that are going to be able to navigate and go, okay, challenges are happening, and we're going to address and work with those. Like, we're here as a team. There's a camaraderie around that. And so, I'm happy that you're aware of it. That's number one. But you might want to take some of the scientific data and research and then use that as a springboard to kind of look at things more closely. So that's my best recommendation for you. And I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, it's a challenge that all of us face. How do we keep our team members motivated? Yeah. Is that we're done? Get off the stage? Did I just get yanked? Yeah? Okay, so questions. Okay, great.
Hi, I have a question over here. On
I thought I was
your
getting
right.
yanked off the stage. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so you have listed out a few tenets, such as to empower yourself as an entrepreneur, such as selfless service and also being better, bigger than myself, right? So what I got from that is you needed to detach yourself to the company and be more related to the purpose the company serves. Yeah. So my question is very often when you start businesses, you would be curtailing the business to churn out the most amount of money. And like you mentioned, organizational efficacy often takes place than getting your members or your employees invested in the ideas. So my question would be, how do you sort of remind your members that you need to think of the purpose instead of what you're doing right now in the company? Because for a lot of people who are in your employees, they will often feel very alienated or also very isolated because whatever they do doesn't really seem like a projection of themselves. That's because you be more focused on organizational efficacy. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, well, there's a lot, in that. So I really appreciate you asking the question. One thing I want to bring up that you said was, one of the purposes of a business is to churn out as much money as possible, right? And so that's one of the things that we can look at and examine, in today's day and age, like, is that really the fundamental purpose behind a business? That's typically how it's been defined. But I think more and more what we're seeing is that the purpose of a business is not just to churn out money, but also to create a greater impact on society. So if you look at people like Elon Musk, he's creating a thriving, sustainable business, right? That's wonderful, but he's also changing the entire transportation industry. That's what's really fueling him, or sending rockets to Mars to be able to deal with some of the biggest issues we face as a species, right? So what you're talking about is it's really important to spend time with your team members to continually reconnect to your why. Why am I doing this? Why are we doing this? And another really important exercise too is that great leaders, okay? I always define leadership as 3 key things. Okay, so one of them is that great leaders see the power in others, and they help other people bring that power to the surface. Okay, so as a leader, your goal is not just to make decisions. As a leader, you're also there to mentor and coach the people within your organization to be able to fulfill their greatest gifts in the world. Okay, so one way that we do that is we do an exercise we call the 4 zones of flow, and we break different activities that we're doing each day into our zone of burnout, our zone of competence, our zone of growth, and our zone of genius. I'll focus on 2 for right now. Your zone of genius is the place where everything flows effortlessly. You're uniquely designed to do this. When you do this activity, you're amazing at it, you're hugely productive, and time just disappears. That's kind of your zone of genius. There's certain things you do where it's just so easy, and you get done with it and you feel increased amounts of energy. Your zone of growth is the growth mindset. Each of your team members has things that they're passionate about doing, but they may not be good at them yet. Right? They want to grow, they want to learn. Like, the most important thing to team members is they want to have autonomy, they want to generate mastery around new subjects, and they want to feel like they have a greater purpose. This was covered in the book Drive by Daniel Pink. It's one of the best management books out there. So when you take the time to actually get to know each one of your team members and identify what are the things that you're amazing at, what are some of the things we're asking you to do that are really burning you out, what are some things that you really want to get great at but you don't have the skills yet, it might take you a while to do it, but I want to give you the space to be able to do it. This is why Google gives a day a week to each one of their team members to innovate and create whatever they want, to keep those people on board and help inspire more innovation within the organization. So the key thing is, again, come back to your why. What's the bigger purpose behind what we're doing as a company? Number 2, then with each team member, get to know the things that they love and the things that they're not so great at and how you can support and mentor and coach them and bring out the power in them. And then again, there's these other components of leadership, which I mentioned. It's in one of our videos. But the next thing is, as a leader, is to operate with a high level of integrity, to keep your agreements, to be emotionally intelligent, to communicate with authenticity and transparency, so you're perfectly aligned and congruent with the way that you're showing up, right? So integrity is a really important part of being a leader. And then the final piece is this selfless service. Be the example within your company that what you're creating is so far bigger than you, right? And invite others into that same context and your organization will expand. Thank you for that question. There was a lot in there. Yeah. This is so much fun. I love this. Okay, yes? Another question. Sometimes the Q&As are the funnest part, huh?
Hi, I'm William.
Yeah, hey William.
I really understand why it's a self-beat up. I sometimes do that to myself, and
Anyone else beat themselves up? Okay. Hey, I'm teaching the class and I still do it, so don't worry about it, okay?
So, is there any exercise or any practice that we can actually follow to have better self-sympathy or selfless?
Yes, super easy. You guys want a super easy skill, okay? All right, so here's the statement that helps with self-compassion. Of course I would feel this way. Okay, so what I mean by that is all of a sudden you go out there and you launch a product and no one really shows up, right? Get a two-star rating on the App Store. You and your team just put in, a year of work to be able to bring this thing to the market, and it just went, whoa, and now you're like, oh my God, my investors that have been sitting around the table watching this, they're not going to fund me because they know I don't have product market fit, blah, blah. You're feeling anxiety, right? You're feeling down. Of course you'd feel this way. right? A little bit of self-compassion. Of course I'd be feeling this way. I put my heart and soul into this and it didn't work out. Okay? That investor just emailed me and said no, and I really wanted that investor. I feel sad. I feel anxious. I don't know what to do now. Of course you'd feel this way. So how often do we actually just allow ourselves, and the thing is we try to run away from nasty feelings and experiences, and what's way more powerful is to simply accept them and embrace them, like, oh, I feel sad right now. Oh, I feel angry right now. Right? When you just embrace and accept your emotions, what you find is that they pass. All experiences are transient. They move through you. So if you're feeling if you're being hard on yourself, sometimes just remind yourself that, hey, it's okay to feel this way. Based on all that just happened. That was really difficult, right? And that helps you kind of move beyond it. Now, the other thing that I want to mention, this is a little bit more complex, but this is why mindfulness is so important. Right? So mindfulness is, all the rage nowadays. A lot of organizations are investing in it. So mindfulness is not just a meditation practice. It's the practice of being able to observe from a place of witness consciousness what's going on. So I'm a recovering self-beat-up addict. Okay? I literally spent years of my life, every time I would say something, there would be a voice that go off in my head would tell me it was stupid, it was ridiculous. I would shut down. I would have physical body sensations of like, I'm just never going to talk ever again because what I just said was so stupid, right? And so there was a point in my life where I realized how that voice was coming from some kind of deep place I couldn't really understand. And I started to just kind of notice it and observe it. And I was like, oh, there's that voice again. But I know that's not true, right? So when you start to become a little bit detached from it and start to look at it, right, it starts to dissipate over time. Now, here I am in front of large groups of people talking, and I don't have that experience at all. So I'm an example of you can change in this way. But so often what happens in our life is that we want to get rid of these things. We have certain patterns we developed as children, self-beat up, lots of anxiety and so forth. Those voices come up and start talking crazy to us, and we want to go get away. But instead, actually just look at them with curiosity and go, there's that voice. And with that awareness, this is actually is the opposite just as true, right? So that practice of mindfulness, strengthening your awareness and your attention muscle, it helps you really navigate these kind of old patterns that are coming around and really bothering you. But it's a practice. It takes a lot to do that. So, did that answer your question? Okay, excellent. So you guys ever see the movie A Beautiful Mind by Russell Crowe, with Russell Crowe in it? Yeah? It's a great movie, right? So here's the example of the mindfulness. He was mentally ill, right? He was seeing visions of a former roommate and a young girl that didn't exist, right? So he's going around the world and he's making all these hallucinations. And then finally one day he was like, wait a second, they're not real, right? He just finally came to the realization, these are not real. These are figments of my imagination, but they're never going to go away. So what he did was instead he started to laugh and kind of chuckle every time he'd see them. He'd say, oh yeah, there they are again. There's those things that aren't real, and I'm okay with it. And that's how he healed himself. Right, so that's what I'm talking about here. It's like we're going to have these little self-beat-up voices that go off in our head. We're going to have these kind of things that come up that we don't even understand where they're coming from, but we can always look at them with mindfulness and just go, oh yeah, there they are. And that's not actually me. I'm actually perfect, whole, just the way I am. This is a tough situation. Let me see that, look at that, and now how do I choose to show up? That's the best analogy I can use. I love that movie for that reason. Yeah, that's a big one, That's a big one, yeah. I know it's like, saying that right there. Okay, anything else before we adjourn and go to lunch? Go to lunch on this one, huh? That's all right. Yeah, I see one hand there raised. Then two, okay.
Hi. My name is Shabazz.
Shabazz, hey, nice to meet you.
First of all, thank you so much for your talk.
Oh, my pleasure.
A lot of things I think most aspiring entrepreneurs and people who are already in the process would relate to. Because, there are a lot of moments where you have no idea what the hell is going on and you're in that self-doubt, and you really need to be strong. I had a question, okay? So a lot of these things would require practice and quite a bit of time before, you reach a stage where you're really confident about yourself. Mm-hmm. Is there any kind of, short kind of advice that you would give for, let's say I start panicking right now about something that is failing for my app, what should be my go-to step first before I can handle it or handle anything else?
Yeah.
Do you have any advice, in that kind of area?
Yeah,
I
do.
It'd be very helpful.
I do, yeah. And so,
Thank
but there's a bigger topic that you're bringing up here, which is, this is one of the most challenging pieces of our work. We live in a world right now of instant gratification, right? So we get on an app and grab an Uber is there in 2 seconds, right? We go into the United States, we get on Amazon, we order something, it's there. We want to connect with our friends, we jump on Facebook, they're right there, right? So more and more, all of our products and services are based on instant gratification. However, when it comes to your career, when it comes to your relationship, and when it comes to transforming really deep-rooted patterns like the ones we've identified here today, unfortunately, there's not an app for that. It doesn't just happen like in 2 seconds, right? So this work, it does take consistency and focus over the course of time to shift these patterns in real and sustainable ways. So what I hear you looking for is kind of that quick little Band-Aid in the moment, which is great. We should have those available to us. However, the bigger opportunity here is, how old are you? You're 22 years old. Okay, so you've got the opportunity to do some really important work on yourself right now that's going to transform the whole rest of your life. I'm very fortunate. I got started when I was like 27, 28, doing some deeper work around this way, and it's completely changed everything I create, everything I build, who I relate with, so it's worth it. So if it takes a little bit of time, if it takes a little bit of dedication to working on yourself, there is nothing more important that you can do. But just remember that as soon as you start working on yourself in a deep way, it's like taking the red pill in the Matrix. You can't ever go back. Once you start unlocking these layers of consciousness within yourself, you can't stop that growth journey. So just know that if you go in, you're going to be there. So now back to a simple step. Okay, so we have a part of our program, and we have a thing called fear melters, which are things that you can do in the moment to be able to relax your parasympathetic nervous system to get more grounded and more present, right? So we go through things like breathing, we have different movement techniques, self-compassion, right, appreciation, mindfulness. There's a lot of different tools and tactics that we use. The absolute simplest one that I can offer you right now, and you can do this in a meeting, something happened that was really challenging in the meeting and you're sitting there with all your team members and you notice you're going to get reactive. Could be you just got an email from an investor that really just turned you down, you're kind of stunned, or you want to like respond back really quickly, okay? One thing to always remember is if you notice that tendency to want to react, okay, take some breaths. Okay, there's nothing wrong with something big happens and taking a day to respond to it. Allow yourself to come back into presence, see all the possibilities, let your expansive mind be able to show you new things that are happening. Why is this happening? What's perfect about it, right? So the key thing, one of the greatest leadership skill sets is instead of reacting, you respond. And it requires just creating a little bit of space between that quick fear-based reaction. So the really simple thing to do, you just sit there with your eyes open or your eyes closed. Okay, this is scientifically proven. And you just imagine the cool air coming in through your nose, and then the warm air as it exits. Cool air coming in through your nose, and the warm air as it exits. And you can also pay attention to your belly rising and falling. That's a form of mindfulness practice. You're just simply watching your breath, and by simply just taking a few breaths like that, you're getting out of that limbic brain, that quick reactive response, and you're getting yourself back into your creative brain where you start to go, okay, why is this happening? What do I need to see? What do I need to learn about this, right? So just a few breaths can do that for you. And you can do it in a meeting with your eyes open. You can be doing it right here, right now. No one will even know you're doing it. Cool air in through your nose, warm air as it exits. Watch your breath. Relax. Okay? Yeah, thank you. All right, great. Oh, but by the way, if you guys ever, if you want to contact me in any way, justin@goodculture.io. So if you guys are interested in any of the things that we do, if you want, one-on-one coaching, if you want to be part of our breakthrough programs, any of those kind of things, you can contact me directly. I'd love to stay in direct contact with everybody that we work with. But just know that if you're going to work with us, you got to really show up. You got to be fully committed. Otherwise, we don't want to work together. So, all right. Thanks, guys, so much. Really appreciate you all being here. Wait, one more question. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi there. Good morning. Thank you so much for having this talk.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So basically, in an ideal world, I feel like it would be really great if we could work with the people who share the same ideals with us. And I feel like, is it possible to nurture these ideals in other people, or do we have to actively seek out people who share the same ideals with us, or is it a balance?
Yeah, so the thing is that if you're trying to initiate different ideals into others, you're playing the role of hero. Right, so you want to look for, like that's why I just said what I just said, which is that if you're not fully committed to learning and being able to challenge your deepest assumptions about reality and look at yourself really closely, I don't really want to work with you because I can't make the changes for you, right? This has nothing to do with me. I'm just the facilitator. I'm just there to mirror back to you, right? So the thing that I look to do when I want to initiate change within others is simply be the inspiration. So the more that I show up, the more that I'm balanced, the more that I practice these things, the more that I sit in team meetings and say, okay, great, let's look at this decision from what's going to be of greatest impact, what's going to be of greatest service to the people that we're working with. So in our case, it's entrepreneurs, business leaders. Like, we took our breakthrough program offline because the online was working great. The results were fantastic, right? But the question that we came back to was, do we want to be huge and get this out to as many people as possible? Or do we want to work with people and go really deep in our breakthroughs and just watch less people transform in amazing ways and then watch the ripples of what they create come from that? Right, so that brought us out of our big, want to be awesome and huge. And it was just like, coming from that place. So the more that you ask these questions, the more that you operate your company this way, then other people will be inspired by that. And I'm constantly inspired by my co-founder. He has a nonprofit organization. He built a curriculum called the 4 Pillars of Well-Being, and it's being initiated through thousands of schools across the world. The King of Bhutan just picked it up and is making it part of the curriculum in all of their schools to teach kids mindfulness and well-being as early as possible. And he set up the whole foundation in such a way where they're helping the teachers bring it to the students, and no one even knows they exist. Because he knows that truth, which we were talking about earlier, which is you can be far more powerful if you don't get any credit for it. So he has no interest in getting like, oh, I'm the Contentment Foundation guy. I help kids get really great well-being. He's going, no. These things have been in practice for thousands of years. This is ancient philosophy. I'm just taking it, using my scientific acumen, and translating it in a way that children can understand to impact the rest of their lives. And that gives me great joy. And I walk around that and I go, great, okay, how do I get the hell out of the way at good culture? I don't want to be Tony Robbins, right? Everything's about Tony Robbins. It can only be as big as Tony Robbins, right? He's awesome, he's amazing, he's one of the best coaches on the planet, but his company can only get as big as him. That's why we're good culture. It's like anybody can take these tools that we're offering and learn them and offer them out in the world so it can expand beyond us. If I die, it can continue. Right? You see what I'm saying? It's like that. I got inspired by seeing my co-founder operate that way, and it changed a lot of the decision making, right? So, long answer to your question, but yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. All right, now am I getting the hook? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Justin.
Okay.
Any more? Are we expecting any more? Are there more? No? All right. Let us know if you like this session or not. I hope none. Download the Bizarro app. Go to the bottom right-hand corner, and send us your feedback and see. Let us know if you need more of these sort of sessions for you, and if you should do anything about this at all. And our next session here will be at 4:30. You're now free to go for your lunch outside. And thank you again so much for making time to come here today. Thank you.
Saya kat sini je.